So, today we're gonna trudge through the age-old debate of what's worse, the N-word or stabbing and killing someone. Now, I know, this is even more contentious than the abortion debate, and the audience is probably split down the middle, but let's see if we can find some common ground and come to a resolution. Take it away, Piers.
When I challenged self-professed racist podcaster Lily Gaddis to show her true white supremacist colours during an uncensored debate a few weeks ago, it's fair to say it all kicked off.
I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly, and you will
well, go
not
on then,
have
say
free-
it. Say
you
the
will
M-
not have
Go on,
free
say
speech.
go on. Say the M word. Go on.
No.
Hang on.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it.
Well, the fallout from that segment went viral, provoking debate from the big names online, including one Stephen Crowder, who called me out for being completely disingenuous for my challenge to racist Gaddis.
Big difference. So that challenge is not genuine. I do think that people shouldn't lose their livelihood or be condemned a racist for the rest of their life because they use a word in a context where there is no hate. That is not represented in the challenge of say it right now just because you want to say it to black people. And then you have Marc Lamont Hill, who I've been on him with Reddit. He was always very nice to me. I mean, there's nothing more emasculating or self-emasculating than saying someone will say a word and I will be the victim.
Well, I thought it was only fair and useful to have this out with Mr. Crowder, man to man. Of course he agreed, because he's a man. In a moment we'll get Marc Lamont Hill's response to it.
You really have to appreciate how happy it made Stephen Crowder to witness Dark Lamont Hill's reaction to that as he just sits there stoically taking it like, yep, you were terrified of, oh, if you say the word, then I'm gonna, And don't worry, Dark Lamont Hill is going to completely backpedal and cope about his reaction and recontextualize it, but let's continue.
Listening to a very, very unpleasant young white woman being deliberately racist, unashamedly racist, wants us to think she's a racist, admits to being racist, and when you talk about context of using the N-word, she is using it in that context. She had no problem with it being used by Shiloh Hendrix. She has no problem with saying it, and my only point in challenging her to say it on air was, well, go on then. If you're going to be that brazen, let's see if you're actually prepared to do it. And it turned out she wasn't. Over to you.
Piers coming in with the highest level of ethical journalistic standards possible and doesn't emotionally front-load his question to Stephen Crowder at all. Doesn't position it in the most pejorative way possible, trying to sway the audience of how to feel. It's nice having this kind of objectivity in 2025. About such a, new topic that no one's ever talked about before.
But we live in a society where right now the racism issue and words are being thrown down as landmines as someone is walking in reverse. And you can look at, for example, I think we're all adults, context and the level of affront, which is what I was addressing there with Dr. Marc Lamont Hill, who's been very much a gentleman with me. And I'll determine the level of authenticity as to that offense. I think we're adults and we can have context. I don't think that there are boogeyman words. I think context matters more. I think that we as a society right now are canceling livelihoods over someone saying a word and permitting reprehensible behavior in the form of crime, in the form of the protests that we have seen in the last recent years. And I think I'd like a society where we are hard on actions and forgiving on words, and certainly in the context of adulthood, able to understand it.
Okay, so look, a large part of what you've just said, I completely agree with. I do think language has been weaponized. I hate cancel culture. I think it's the epitome of woke bullshit, etc., etc. But rather like with free speech itself, when people say that free speech is unlimited, it's actually not unlimited.
So Stephen Crowder is making a point that's barely even nuanced, where it's the level of affront when we're going to compare the N-word with stabbing someone, because there was two GoFundMes. One was a white woman calling a black 5-year-old the N-word and another guy the N-word, and she got over $500K. But that was after a black teenager stabbed a white teenager and killed him, and that black teenager, through a GoFundMe, raised over $500K. So Stephen Crowder's trying to, through all of Piers' emotional front-loading, get to that point. But of course Piers Mogan has to go, oh, free speech isn't unlimited. Well, is murder unlimited? So I'm gonna skip well past the yelling fire in a crowded theater argument and how speech isn't unlimited, there's defamation. We get it. We know. So let's fast forward it. Crowder is just looking for a yes or no that Kanye West's song is pretty much anti-Semitic. Just looking for a yes or a no, and listen to the front loading.
I can be sure what you're saying.
Kanye West's recent song, right? His recent banger. We both agree it's at least on the line of anti-Semitic, right?
Yeah, I don't
think that anyone out there.
Yeah, listen, I think that a guy who has spent the last year is bestowing the virtues of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, who's been selling swastika. But I think it's an important clarification.
Okay,
because
I agree with you.
I'll tell you why, because he would argue that the actual words of the record are not anti-Semitic, right? And it's hard. But the fact he's got millions of people running around chanting Heil Hitler, clearly, to me, is an extreme form of anti-Semitism by a man who knows what he's doing.
I agree with you, okay? I just wanted a yes or no because I wanted to get to the point, but I agree with you.
It's complicated simply
because...
It's not
that complicated.
It's complicated
right?
because the actual lyrics, he would argue, are not anti-Semitic. He's trying to be clever, and I don't think we should give him the pass.
Okay, I agree. I'm trying to create a really, really blatant, obvious analogy here to make a point. So we both agree that it's anti-Semitic. I think it's bad. I think saying Hail Hitler is bad. Okay. That is not, however, a violation in any way. Your First Amendment protects it. Now, saying I would like to, I am calling you to enact what Hitler has enacted, that's a call to action. Defamation requires damages. And I want to get to this because this does matter. Okay? When we're talking about this new song, and as a comedian and as a linguist, I'm going to say the word here so that everybody knows, and that's what you're going to clip. We're looking at words that are offensive, a song that is offensive, but one is a boogeyman word. We have one noun, a verb, and a noun. Okay, we have a noun by itself, contextually.
Says the N-word.
That's bad. Shouldn't say it, but it's not imbued with any power outside of historical context. The last noun, Hitler, is imbued with the power of the verb that precedes it. Hail, to praise, to venerate. That'll get clipped, even though I'm condemning the song as anti-Semitic, and not one person here who would be the victim of a more severe call to action is going to say it's anti-Semitic. I think we're in a silly point in this country when we're pulling this clip to condemn the anti-Semitism here at the studio, and people going, hey, can I get a second cut of that N-word, Hail Hitler?
Crowder makes a pristine point where they won't say the N-word, like how I have to say the N-word, but I can say Hail Hitler, which is a call to something. That should be more of an affront to say Hail Hitler than it is to just say the N-word in context. Even when his production crew is discussing things, they say N-word Hail Hitler. This is a linguistic point, and this is what we have to address as a country, because the way it's going right now is not working. And this is a substantive point, where just saying one word versus Hail Hitler, it's imbalanced and it's ridiculous. This is how we fight for the language.
That's the point. It's not genuine.
Would you have used the N-word in the way that you just did if you had a black guest with you?
Like Dr. Hill? Sure.
You would?
Sure. Do you understand the point? Again, as a linguist, when you look at that, context matters. And if someone is going to say, or try to, by the way, attribute any hatred or malice in someone's, it is incumbent upon them to prove it. In your instance, I understand it. In this one
here. So what about, all right, listen. So what about Shiloh Hendrix, who is caught on camera repeatedly using the N-word, says it to a 5-year-old kid, right? And is now getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions now, I haven't checked, in charity donations backing her. Do you support what she did on that bit of footage?
I don't think that someone should scream the N-word at a child any more than I think a grown adult should call a child a piece of shit.
So we're not really getting anywhere in this conversation. Piers Mogan is like, yeah, but don't you think it's terrible that she called a poor, innocent, small, tiny, little 5-year-old Negro child the N-word? And Steven Crowder's like, yeah, dude, it's bad. It's a bad word. She's starting to lose it. And I'm starting to lose it. It's so boring. Have they just slow down the conversation and bottleneck it so you really can't talk about what you want to talk about, but they're acting like they're talking about something. It's uncensored, but meanwhile, he's controlling the pace of it. You know, Piers Mogan is accusing Steven Crowder of being a paid member of the woke right. Thanks a lot, James Lindsay. This is a really useful term. Steven Crowder just laughs at him. He's like, no one calls me woke right. That's a silly thing to say.
You're sounding like the woke right, a phenomenon I didn't even know existed, but then I've been reading and writing about it. You've been labeled the woke right, and here you are, to me, I say this respectfully, sounding like a paid-up member of the woke right. Because what you're trying to do is say there is some equivalence. I remember...
Let's also provide some context. The point that I was addressing was you labeling everyone who gave to the Give, Send, Go. By the way, I've also never been labeled woke right. That's very, very silly.
Isn't that super annoying? Piers Mogan doesn't even know what the woke right is, and he's calling Steven Crowder the woke right. Makes you feel kind of sad inside, doesn't it? Kind of gives you some dark thoughts. So let's tag our boy in. Mini Michael Dark Duncan is going to pop on the screen, and Piers Mogan is going to immediately act like his coach is Emilio Estevez and mighty cuck his way through this. We saw his introduction with Steven Crowder. Now let's see his introduction with Marc Lamont Hill, where Piers did tell a white woman and really goaded her. Really encouraged her to say the N-word in front of Dark Lamont Hill. In front of Dark Lamont Hill. And he has regrets over that because of the reaction. And we're going to explore that in just a moment, but first we have to get through this self-struggle session by Piers Mogan.
Okay, Marc Lamont Hill, welcome back to Uncensored. I saw your reaction in another podcast I think you did.
Well, you were pretty aggrieved at what you thought I was trying to do there. And just to reiterate to you, in the moment, I was trying to expose her cowardice. And I listened to your impassioned, immediate response to my challenge, and I immediately realised this would not be a smart thing to do. So it certainly wasn't premeditated. It certainly wasn't from anything other than a place of, you are an unashamed racist who says you say this word all the time, including to black people. I bet you don't, and you're just saying this to be performative. Let's see if I'm right. And, with hindsight...
The first thing is, I guess, to Stephen's initial point about my self-emasculation. At the thought, I wasn't melting down, as some on the right have said, because I was afraid that this boogeyman N-word was going to pop out of her mouth and I was going to fall away. That wasn't the point at all.
Yeah, Piers, you tosser, you bloody bellend. See how calm and composed he is now? That completely overshadows the delicate chimphony he was offering you when he was making it about himself and he was saying, I'm the victim. That wasn't about him. He was just so mad he was swinging from branch to branch, shaking the camera for other people.
Say the N-word, go on.
No. I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it.
And to prepare you for what a lot of leftists do to bore you to death so you don't listen to what they're saying, let me show you his speech patterns. There's a lot of repeating, there's a lot of stuttering, there's a lot of interrupting himself. So let me isolate these clips and show you why it's so difficult to listen to them and how it's on purpose. Because he's an intellectual. He should know how to speak clearly and concisely, but listen to the obfuscation in just his rhetorical delivery alone.
And I get that. I guess my point at the time was for me, on Gold Digger, in the exact context that we're afraid of, or not afraid of, in the exact context that we're frustrated about. In the exact, when you talk about context, lots of things again. First, I think Stephen is, and this isn't my guess, but they're not when you look in the comments and when you talk to people who are funding that campaign, but there's a huge difference to exercise any radical honesty about where they want to live. But I don't want to live around black people under any circumstances.
Now, sure, people can say, well, those are edited together. I'm gonna give you right now 1 minute of Darktavius Mingo speaking, okay? 1 minute, and then we don't have to listen to him for very long for the rest of the video. I promise you. Try to get through it 1 straight minute. Here we go.
For me, as far as the other point here, I don't accept Stephen's analysis here of the donations to the campaign. Even if he is right that people were donating out of some political reaction to our hypersensitivity as a society, that's the wrong person to do it to. Do it to the person that's getting doxxed because they made a mistake 10 years ago. Do it to the person who rapped the N-word, on Gold Digger and suddenly it has lost their ability to go to college. There's all kinds of people who we might say, even if we don't agree fully on the context, who we could say, hey, is a better example of the cause. But as you said, Piers, this is somebody who was using the word in the exact context that we're afraid of, or not afraid of, in the exact context that we're frustrated about, in the exact context that we think it's being used in. And so to dump money, almost $800,000 into her coffers, it ultimately rewards her for using that language. Imagine if an arsonist were to set a building on fire.
Isn't the irony delicious? Saying the N-word is like burning down a building. No, burning down a building is what N-words did for the whole summer of 2020. Now listen, I show you most lefties, and they're pretty unbearable. He's extremely unbearable to listen to, and he goes on for a long time, and he extra doesn't say anything, and he'll make a point like this, and not make a point, but he'll insinuate what he's about. That's how he talks the whole time. All I can really do is just show you what Steven Crowder is saying in response to him, because it's really level-headed, straightforward, and what we have to hear in 2025.
Fund the person who's done
Mr. Crowder has very politely raised his right hand to speak, which I think is a rare example of good manners on this program. So, Stephen, your response.
I will say, great, now do stabbing. And I think I know what the answer is going to be. Can we both, if we want to find common ground here, agree that, yeah, we really find ourselves at a weird point in this country when a bunch of people are giving to a lady who yells the N-word at a 5-year-old, and a bunch of people are giving to someone who is famous for no other reason than allegedly stabbing an innocent person? I know that we'll say it's because innocent until proven guilty, but this is the information that we have on both of these scenarios at this point in time. And what I'm discussing is the...
All Snark LeBlanc Shill can do is go, no, my narrative, no, your framing is wrong. Because with a postmodernist, there's no truth factor. Everything is just framing because anything can be anything. And all it can muster out is a slight whimper. No.
In time, what I'm discussing is the prescription moving forward. And one final thing. Here's the point that I was making that you didn't show in that clip too, was saying that it's racist for someone to say they would prefer to live in a predominantly white neighborhood, or they would prefer to live in their neighborhood, which is not black, I believe is what they said. And I don't believe it was necessarily her. I believe there was a man on the panel who said that, but you do. And I'm not going to attribute racism in your heart because only 4% of the population where you're placed in Los Angeles is black. I think we need to stop attributing and imbuing hatred, and I think we need to stop empowering them. But we do find ourselves at a point in this country where neither of these give, send, goes would have blown up if it existed 10 years ago. Why? How'd we get here?
Crowder making the obvious point that this happened for a reason. There's been a lot of animus building up and a lot of double standards in society. It's not like this happened for no reason. One is clearly worse than the other. Saying the N-word versus stabbing. Very salient points.
I think social media is a part of it, but I also don't think that we're dealing with an accountability culture as far as the country. I think we're dealing with a false accountability culture as far as the media and those in the establishment. You have myself, for example, who was demonetized, throttled on YouTube for simply using the term lispy queer, someone who referred to themselves as a lispy queer. It was a quote. Then moved over to Rumble, and after the Exodus, Diageo, in charge of 80% of the world's advertising, told Rumble that it wasn't enough to demonetize myself, but that they wouldn't spend $1 of advertising on the entire platform, an alternative platform to YouTube, unless I was removed. You've had entire governments try and remove platforms for freedom of speech. This is not the accountability that people in the streets are calling for. What is being called for example, from people in the media, is a lie. They would rather hear a lie than the truth. And so you have people checking out. For example, someone's afraid to say, could be my black neighbors, but it's anecdotal. I'm not supposed to say the black friend thing. Move to the same neighborhood I have because it's safer and there's a stronger sense of community. But if you want me to lie to you and say, I picked that neighborhood and it just so happens to be more mixed or more white, but my neighbor's a former Dallas Cowboy, you can demand a lie, but the media is demanding the lie, not the American people. I am in no way concerned going down to a black neighborhood because I do it to the tune of hours, hundreds of hours of footage and hundreds of millions of views discussing these issues. The challenge I run into is when someone else, a third party, wants to play a game of telephone and tell them that it's racist. You can go and watch. I had not one, not two, but 10 people in this installment say, yeah, I think all lives matter. I think anyone who says that's white supremacy is out of their mind. They don't speak for us, the black community. I'd never know that unless I had that conversation with them. Very few people are doing it. You're demanding a lie of people.
Okay, Mark, your response.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with making decisions about where you want to live. But there's a huge difference between saying, I want to live in a statistically safe neighborhood, or I want to live in a historically safe neighborhood, and I don't want to live around black people under any circumstances. And again, the latter is what came out in our conversation on the show the last time. And we're melding those two things as if they are the same. I ain't met a person yet that doesn't want to live in a safe neighborhood. I want to live in a safe neighborhood. I also want to live around black people.
Well, that's interesting. Can a white person say, I want to live in a safe neighborhood, I also want to live around white people? That seems kind of like a double standard. Now, Steven Crowder might not show it, but I think the meter is rising right now. I mean, that's a pretty huge double standard. He can just sit there and go, yeah, I want to live around black people. Well, what if a white person said, I want to live around white people? Don't do it, Mark. Don't do it. I'm warning you.
No, but Stephen's point is the one is worse than the other.
I don't think we can end this on this, Pierce. I can take 30 seconds here. If we're talking about accountability,
Mark, let him finish. Mark, shut up. Mark, no. Mark. Mark.
Put it on the card right now.
That's it.
Have a good one.